I was seeing this pattern that repeated. And I was like, how do I break this cycle of having to relocate and pay for electricity and pay for water and do the same for other people I care about? I thought of a way to not only fold up my house using a self-assembling design, almost like an origami house, but also how to think about how we're using electronics that are getting more advanced and then integrating them into the home so it could be more convenient for me, kind of how like people had a computer and a camera and an MP3 player all separately back in like the 80s and stuff until someone glued together the first smartphone. Right now, we're forced to pay for like a company to build a house and then another company to run the electricity and another company to do fiber optics and another company to do water. And then you have to filter it on your own. And these are all separate steps that make it very, very difficult. And it causes frustration and cost for a person who's trying to move all of the time.
Welcome to Life Chapters Podcast with Luis Vega.
Welcome to Life Chapters. My name is Luis Vega, and today we have a special guest. There's one of my friends that I served in the United States Marine Corps. He is the founder and CEO of Renewed Robotics. So, Dejan Ennals, welcome, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's just get into it. I know we haven't seen each other since we got out of the Marine Corps, but can you tell me a little bit more about you and what you do now?
Yeah, thank you. Again, it has been a very long time since we've seen each other, a few years now. I would love to say that a lot of my friends that I stay in touch with on like a daily or weekly basis, but I have moved a lot in my lifetime. And so I unfortunately, but fortunately do have a lot of friends all over the world that I kind of have to talk to remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's honestly about kind of where my life story or where I started. I actually grew up in a household where we moved a few times during the time I grew up. And
Mm-hmm.
so that really made me aware of, even young in my life, that these resources from household to household have to be relocated. And so whether it be maintaining your connections with your friends and family to different networks and neighborhoods, but then also your simple things like your water and your electricity also have to be moved from one house to another. It's not something that's standard with every home, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's actually something that's interesting, I guess, to start about my life that kind of brought me to where I am today, moving a lot in my childhood and then also being in the Marine Corps, where we also have to move frequently and pack up and then set up resources in different locations. I realize that this problem persists throughout all places on earth, not just for me in my life moving all of the time. And so I
Mm-hmm.
realized that if I used my skills and my network, I could maybe make a way for me to have my water, my electricity, and my resources be able to move with me easily and then
Mm-hmm.
have to maintain those friendships. Obviously, that's a different bridge to tackle when it comes to messaging and texting friends and video chats. But
Yeah.
I was thinking there'd be a great way that I could take my house with me no matter where I moved and have the electricity and water and everything come with it. And that started from the beginning of my life through my adult career and until now into Renewed Robotics.
Okay. Now, you mentioned moving as a young kid. What made you guys move so much?
Yeah, so I actually lived in a very small area in Cambridge, Maryland, in
Mm-hmm.
Dorchester County. It's a very rural area, so we actually have a lot of like square footage when it comes to the county, but the population is very small. And so for my family to stay employed, like for my mother to work, we would often have to move to wherever there was work in the area. And so that would mean moving from one elementary school to another so that my mother or parents could stay employed in one area, and that had to be packing up and then having a different electricity bill and a different water bill. And so having to be aware of that from a very young age. And then now
Mm-hmm.
into adulthood, realizing that's something that I deal with as an adult, having to find new jobs or new careers means that I have to find a new home to live in and then pay new electricity and new water. Sorry to make the big jump every
Yeah.
single time, but it correlates a lot. And so that's why we moved a lot. It was just making sure it was for resources. It was making sure that we could secure the resources to stay stable. If we didn't have to get electricity and water and stuff like that, we could stay in one place. But unfortunately, when work and money moves, that means the family has to move as well.
Yeah. Now, moving from school to school, often, how
Mhm.
did you approach that? Because, staying in contact with the previous elementary or high school or middle school, going into a new one and starting fresh with new peers. How did you approach that?
Yeah, it was really something that I feel like I didn't necessarily think about consciously as a child. I guess I was fortunate enough to be neuroplastic and open minded enough to kind of just be happy about the opportunity of meeting new people, kind of a grow where you're planted mindset, even from youth. But when it comes to maintaining those friendships, I've always been, at least from what I think, is one of the first people to let my friends know of a good idea, of something cool that happens either to me or to someone nearby that I can share. And so when it came to maintaining friendships and relationships, it was to also make sure that I'm not greedy with my ideas. And so that way, no matter where I was located at the time, they would feel as though whenever they caught up with me, they were welcome into my home and with the latest and greatest resources that I have, because I've always been the person to share the good things that I have and not necessarily hoard them, but to share them with my friends. And so I feel like that's a way to build those connections that people really reside with and appreciate genuinely. You're not going to keep the good water, to yourself. If there's something good, you share it with people that you care about.
Now, how did you end up in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually moved around the eastern shore of Maryland a lot, and there's a big presence for Wallops Island. There's a
Hmm.
Wallops Island, Virginia has a NASA satellite like launch vehicle facility there. And the other part of Maryland that I'm not very familiar with is the legislative, more like DC Beltway administrative kind of Maryland. And so I knew that on either side of me there was space exploration as well as like massive government, really big industrial stuff going on. But I was kind of in between. And so I really wanted to make sure I aspired to do something that was really big and outside of my community to make sure that I could not only lift myself up, but then other people around me. So I first started applying to all of the colleges around me for aerospace engineering. I was fortunate enough, I got accepted to all of the schools. I was actually skilled in like computer aided drafting and design. I competed in Skills USA for my high school. And so I went on to like compete doing computer designs and stuff like that in high school. And then after I realized, okay, I'm going to be graduating high school and I would like some real world experience, not just necessarily being really good at like math and calculations and computer stuff. I wanted to kind of get out and get my hands dirty. I saw that the Marine Corps was a good opportunity, not only to get the aviation experience, but also to say that I did something challenging in my youth. And so that seemed like a good combination to take advantage of both my youth and my athleticism, as well as my bright mind and love for aviation, if that makes sense.
What did you do after the Marine Corps?
Yeah. So the journey after the Marine Corps wasn't a straight line. It wasn't as if I only had one thing in mind that I was going to accomplish and then accomplish that being Renewed Robotics. I did always want to go into aerospace and mechanical engineering. And so after my time in the Marine Corps, I then got directly back on track for aviation or for mechanical engineering schooling. And so I was attending actually school in Arkansas at the time. My wife, she is a doctor. And so she was actually finishing her medical school training. And I was actually thinking about how we have to move again. And so I was like, okay, now we have to find a new home with another electricity provider and another water provider. And so, in the process of thinking about this and thinking about my time in the Marine Corps of having to pack up efficiently, but also doing more with less. And then my time before that, even in computer aided drafting and design in high school. And then my time even before that of having to move frequently and making sure I could secure the resources like water and electricity. I was seeing this pattern that repeated. And I was like, how do I break this cycle of having to relocate and pay for electricity and pay for water and do the same for other people I care about? And so that's what brought me to Renewed Robotics. I thought of a way to not only fold up my house using a self-assembling design, almost like an origami house, but also how to think about how we're using electronics that are getting more advanced and then integrating them into the home so it could be more convenient for me, kind of how like people had a computer and a camera and an MP3 player all separately back in like the 80s and stuff until someone glued together the first smartphone. Right now, we're forced to pay for like a company to build a house and then another company to run the electricity and another company to do fiber optics and another company to do water. And then you have to filter it on your own. And these are all separate steps that make it very, very difficult, and it causes frustration and cost for a person who's trying to move all of the time. So this is something that I designed. I was like, okay, well, how about I use my computer-aided drafting and design skills? And I went into my software computer engineer mind, and I was like, if I were to design a house that could fold up and have all of the electronics, the water, everything built in, what would that look like for me? And then as I saw that come to fruition, I also appreciated how I could share this idea with everyone I knew, everyone in the world, going back to being that child who wanted to share all of the cool ideas and cool toys. I said, okay, I
Hmm.
can't keep this idea to myself of how to have like a home that can be built instantly and have all of its own resources. And so I wanted to make this available to people who are facing housing insecurity for disaster response, as well as regular people who just want a tiny home or ADU. And so I then realized this is a company, this is a business that someone has to build and make. And so I then went back to those friends and went back to my friends in the Marine Corps, my fellow engineers, all the way back from high school and in college to say, hey, can we come together and build this project? And that's what started Renewed Robotics.
Now it makes a lot more sense hearing about your story, your upbringing, moving from one place to the other, packing, setting up the light, setting up the water, the location, all these different things. You applied it and you found the need because you cannot be the only person that is moving constantly. There is disasters that happen all the time, and then people are left without a home. So now you saw an opportunity to give back to the community, to give back to the people that experience the same thing or are experiencing the same thing that you did. And then you started developing Renewed Robotics. That is awesome. See, I like hearing the story behind it because now it all makes sense on why you decided to do this. Now, what is the vision, the entire vision of Renewed Robotics?
Yeah. So Renewed Robotics is a pretty grand vision. I'm definitely not someone who has the, I guess, privilege of thinking small. Everything I can understand, I like to think about it to not only its simplest form, but its most complicated form as well. So, in making Renewed Robotics, I wanted to bring something that added value to people's lives, not just something that either made it more difficult or made those resources less attainable. And so, the grand vision of Renewed Robotics is making people resource independent, is making sure that if you can see that there's daylight outside, that there's going to be electricity inside your home, and that you can now pull water from the air or from the atmosphere and filter it so you can now have clean drinking water, but that being standard for everyone on Earth. That's the very basic vision of Renewed Robotics with the SAM. When it comes to the full vision of what Renewed Robotics plans to do with the SAM and other products in the future, I would love to provide these for disaster response, for housing insecurity. Not only that, but then to scale this product up. The SAM is only a tiny home right now. They're about just under 200 or around 200 square feet. I would like to make bigger versions eventually so that the traditional housing market, you don't have to now have people come out and build it brick by brick. You can have your entire home set up instantly and have all of your electricity and water, but now for a full size family with guests, not kind of like a tiny home or a cabin. And that would be the full scale for Earth. Ideally, I would then like to take the self-assembling municipality or the SAM and make pressurized versions. So all of the resources that we have on Earth when it comes to access to deserts and Antarctic regions in the cold, as well as high temperature gradients, we can then take that science, that research and development, and make pressurized versions for exoplanetary exploration. So then when humans go to the moon or go to Mars, instead of 3D printing and having to put the walls in separately and then pressurize it separately, not only the entire structure can unfold on its own, it can generate its own electricity, and then you can begin your habitation of that other planet using Renewed Robotics SAM. And that same design was the same one that was used for housing and security on Earth. So it can work every step of the way.
Very nice. Now, there's a lot of technical people out there, but there's more people that they just want to see what they're getting. Now, what I mean by that, let's just say you have a SAM. Someone purchases a SAM and they take it to a location, a land that they purchased. What is the process? Like they deliver it, they set it up on the floor, and to assemble itself, how do they do that?
Yeah. So you can go to renewedrobotics.com right now today and pre-order a SAM. And when you are delivered that device or delivered your SAM, any flat ground will drop that off for you. And there's a Renewed Robotics app that's available right now on the App Store. Right now, it's just for tracking your pre-orders and for referral discounts. So telling your friends and family about the SAM, you can now get a discount off of your pre-order price. But once that SAM gets delivered to you, that same app, you'll then be able to assemble your SAM hands free. So instead of having a crew of people come out and set up your cabin and having cranes and construction that takes weeks and having to worry about weather, now your SAM is completely automated. It unfolds by itself and you can walk in within 10 minutes, about depending on the weather in the surrounding area. Each wall unfolds by itself and then it drills its own foundation into the ground, and it has solar panels on the outside. So these solar panels generate electricity. So anywhere you put it on Earth, even if there's trees around, they can then capture light. And these solar panels can have electricity for not only daytime, but nighttime energy usage. And all of this is very modular. So once you do have your SAM set up, you don't have to worry about us coming to maintain it for you. You can now move your solar panels, move your batteries, move your water filters all on your own and upgrade it and maintain it all from your smartphone. And so that's kind of the process of once you get your SAM delivered, that it's now yours and you don't necessarily need any other setup and it can be completely maintained by you. If you want replacement parts or anything like that, we can ship them to you, but you don't need contractors now climbing on your roof or underneath your house to set up all of these utilities. These can all be done by the end user.
Very nice. This, I'm an entrepreneur, and in real estate, what I'm thinking is having like a acreage, having acreage in a place, ordering like 10, 20, or even 100 SAMs and, unfolding everything on the right square footage for each SAM. And then just renting them out as a glamping, as an ADU, Airbnb, some sort of short term, experience in something new that people can just have like a quick weekend or even a week getaway. Because how long can a person stay in there before they need some sort of service?
Hmm. Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of our customers right now, they are pre-ordering them for that exact same reason. They have 5 or 10 acres and they don't want to run electricity and water and fiber optics all over that land to different cabins. Now each one is completely off grid and you can order 5, 10, 20, 30 of them and have them all be remotely accessible and rent them out and track all of them. When it comes to needing anything, since the SAM generates its own electricity, these are actually ideal for them to be completely off grid. You can actually have like a parking lot or something like that, and then have everyone take like electric scooters into like the
Mm.
SAM resort, if you will, if you want it to be a truly like off grid experience. So you don't have noise, traffic, or generators or anything like that nearby. It can be very secluded. And then when it comes to services, every SAM is completely self sustaining. The water that becomes used is then composted so that you can use it for any nearby gardens or return it to earth safely without any harsh chemicals, as well as an advanced water filtration system that can then be disposed of as any wastewater would be. That would be well over a year though. So it's the first end-to-end housing solution for, like you're saying, anything from disaster response to setting up an entire community in a couple of days.
Yeah, that sounds so interesting. And I am for sure getting on that, because we talked offline and we're already doing something with that. Now, I know where you've been. I know where you're going, but none of that could be without any struggles. Can you tell me of an event that challenged you and almost broke you, either on the personal or business or both?
Yeah, so there's definitely been a few struggles in my life that definitely have set me back quite a bit. I've been a very proactive person throughout my life. I've definitely tried to prepare for what life can throw at me and have a plan A, B, C, D, you know. But there was an event actually several years ago that was extremely challenging. We were moving again, always moving, but we were moving from Oregon to Arkansas actually for the start of our school and training there. And when we were moving, we stopped in a hotel in Utah, and someone took all of the things that were in our U-Haul trailer from our personal vehicle and drove away with it. And so that was very devastating, having to reset all of our personal belongings as well as like financial assets, investments, things that we really cared about on like an intimate level that didn't really have like a finite value. And then our insurance wasn't extremely helpful in that situation. And so that was a very difficult situation to continue to overcome, and realizing the insecurity that comes with being able to having to reset and not own anything anymore, and really having to buy all new things. It makes you really appreciate what it means to own a resource or to own anything. And so kind of in that being set back, I also realized I don't own my electricity and I don't own my water. And so it kind of added to the chaos to not only have to buy all new things, but to then have to go back into the rat race of securing those resources that I had to everywhere else, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I remember this event because we had a phone conversation around the time that happened. You were in transition from Oregon to Arkansas, and it just made me think that a lot of the times we have things, material things, all throughout the house and in our person, and sometimes we don't value it enough when we have it until it's gone. Now, what was your first thought or feeling in your spouse as well? Because you guys were doing this together. How was your feeling at that point when you realized where's the truck? What happened?
Yeah, initially it was rough. Actually, that night at like 1 or 3 a.m., I actually got up and went and checked on all of our stuff just to like make sure, because I couldn't sleep with everything we owned in the world being like out in the parking lot. And so I got up and checked on it, and it was still there at like 3 a.m. And then we got up to leave the next morning and it was gone. So it must
Hmm.
have been like, I know almost like the hour in which someone, stopped by and just took advantage of that. It was really jarring, but we also were on a very tight timeline. And so we had to start medical school and start my mechanical engineering school training like within a couple of days after that. And so while everything in us wanted to like drive around Salt Lake City, Utah and find our stuff, we had to file a police report and we had to keep moving, and call our insurance. It was a lot of really appreciating, like you're saying, that we owned things, but at that moment we had each other and what we had prepared for. So, like a plan A, a plan B, some money in savings. And then we had to keep moving. We had to realize that the world isn't going to stop spinning just because we lost all of our things. So, we have to keep
Mhm.
becoming better people and keep challenging ourselves, even though the world is also going to challenge us independently.
Yeah. And experiencing that on you, Dejan, as a person, and then your wife as a person, it's devastating. But you guys had each other. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the type of conversations and support both of you were giving each other?
Yeah, it was definitely a time where you have to not let your ego take advantage of the situation. There's the strike, or the initial jarring strike of things being gone once. And while you're there to support each other, you don't want them to rob you again, and you don't want them to take all those
Mm,
things a second time because you're meditating on all the things you've lost. And so they continue to remove that, and so that was very, very hard to come over, not only as an individual but also as a couple, when you build a life together and you get each other gifts that you've worked really hard for, but in a selfless act you got it for the other person. And now both of those things are gone to someone else who wasn't in your relationship. It can make times very difficult for having simple conversations. And so making sure that we're on each other's side and in that support, it definitely strengthened a lot of the things that we didn't necessarily anticipate having to strengthen in our relationship.
yeah. Struggles is what makes or breaks a family, a couple, a partnership that we can have. And I've known you for a long time, and I remember when you proposed to your wife, and you guys are still here. Failures, wins, moving from left to right, moving states, medical school, mechanical engineering school, getting all your stuff just taken after, blood, sweat, and tears, going into buying gifts, buying memories for each other, but you guys are still together. You guys are still together, and stuff can be replaced. Yes. The strength that you guys have captured by all the up and downs and just the journey of your life chapters, it is amazing. And when we have our phone conversations, I like asking, like, how's your wife doing, and the support that you provide. Now she actually graduated. She's a doctor now, working and doing her thing. You're doing your thing, and then she supports you on Renewed Robotics, and how this is going to be a huge company that is going to solve a lot of the states and the countries, even the world's needs when it comes to moving, providing a home for a lot of families that are on missions, that are devastated by natural disasters, that they want to start a business, or they just want to get out and explore and be in nature or desert or anything like that. Now, throughout your entire journey, from when you were a kid until today, do you have anyone that has been guiding you or mentored you throughout your entire journey?
I think I think there has been in both people who exist currently, like you want to give people their roses for people who support you in real life. I definitely have people who I've met recently, even in college. Dr. Virginia, he has several PhDs in like robotics and nanotechnology and mechatronics and stuff like that. And he was one of the first people that I showed the idea of the self-assembling municipality to. And so he's someone with like a doctorate in robotics engineering. And so I'm very fortunate for him to be humble enough to take the idea seriously, as well as being able to help me in that sense. I've had a string of great leaders in the Marine Corps as well as great peers. And so that's a really fortunate thing I've had. A lot of people in the Marine Corps, they are kind of turned away from people when they try hard or when they're motivated about being their best selves. And I was fortunate enough to have peers and leaders in the Marine Corps that when I wanted to be a meritoriously promoted, or I wanted to get pistol qualification, or there's a lot of people who aren't a collateral duty inspector in my job in the Marine Corps, and I got 3 collateral duty inspector certifications. And so having a chain of command that would allow me to go out of not only my typical expectations, but also excel as an individual within the military. I was very fortunate enough to have that privilege. There's a lot of people that I look up to that are alive. There's also people that I also have to respect when it comes to, I don't want to come across as being tribal or tribalistic, but Harriet Tubman is from the same town I was born in. She's from
Mm,
Cambridge, Maryland. And I don't know if you're familiar with like the Underground Railroad or
yeah.
like liberation, but that's something that I think about regularly. A lot of people that are looked upon as heroes are oftentimes ridiculed, or they're criminals or bad people when they're alive. And so making sure that I appreciate people for doing the right thing, not necessarily always the thing that they're told to do. That's something that I think about all the day. And the people who I idolize as heroes aren't always necessarily the people that the world sees as a hero at the time they were available. And so making sure that I do the right thing when no one's looking, or when no one wants me to do the right thing, is something that I've had to like immortalize and appreciate from my heroes.
hmm Well, I just want to give a shout out to the doctor that was humbled enough, because a lot of the times people have many titles, many degrees, and because of that, they make themselves not as approachable.
Hmm.
And Dr. What was his name again?
Dr. Virginia.
Regina. Got it. So Dr. Regina listened to you, saw the vision, the need that it can solve,
Hmm.
multiple PhDs,
Yeah.
and now helped you, mentored you, and even part of this journey of developing Renewed Robotics and all these complexities to solve a need. Now, throughout everything, what's one lesson that you learned the hard way?
I think so. I don't necessarily always want to be like the best teacher or master of wisdom, but a lesson that I learned the hard way, and it still sounds like a harsh lesson, is that no one is going to care about your career as much as you do. And so that's something that I would even tell to the Marines that worked underneath me, that if I want them to get meritoriously promoted, or if I want them to outshine their peers, that they also have to show up and put in the extra work and be there after work and do book reports and do extra studying for their job and their military specific school training. So doing that, I also realized that I can do all of my work getting on a meritorious board and writing my own meritorious package, but there's people who won't care if I don't bother them about it. So you can do everything right, but you also have to tell people that you're doing the right thing a lot of times because they're busy in their own life. And so you may seem worried that you're annoying this person who has higher status than you, but they may genuinely not know how busy you are being doing the right thing. And so you may have to pester them 3, 4, 5 emails or messages to let them know, hey, I'm doing the right thing. I would just like you to know, just sometimes checking in with people, they won't know until 6 months later. And then they say, hey, have you been doing the right thing? I haven't heard from you. So making sure that I check in with people and letting them know, that's something I learned the hard way, that I won't necessarily get promoted just from doing the right thing. I have to do the right thing and tell people and advocate for myself, and letting my people who follow underneath me know that not only do they have to work hard, but I can't work harder than the work they give me. So they have to put out as much as they can. And even then, you have to know people aren't going to care as much as you care about yourself. And so advocating for yourself after you do the hard work as well is something I definitely had to learn the hard way after losing 2 meritorious boards when I should have won. And I just needed someone to advocate harder for me in my corner, and making sure I provided that resource to my Marines when they needed someone to advocate for them.
Yeah, that is so true. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because even though you're doing whatever it takes, if you don't say anything, nobody really pays attention, because we pay attention to ourselves the most. We criticize ourselves and the whole thing before ourselves. We don't care about anyone else, but it's our job to do the right thing, like you mentioned, but also tell others that you're doing the right thing. What you're doing, you have to show what you're doing to others so they can see at the same time. Because if you didn't tell me about Renewed Robotics, we wouldn't be here right now. So you have to share what you're working on, even if it just an idea. If it's just an idea, cool, this is my goal. That's how you started reaching out to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an idea. And now you start sharing it with many other investors, other people in mechanical engineering. And now you're building this. You already have pre-orders because they also see it, because you've been sharing the hard work that you've been putting and what the benefits are of that. Now, what stage of your life are you currently in, Nels?
I don't necessarily know, I guess, zooming out, how I could label this exact portion, chapter, segment. I would like to characterize it as growth, but it is quite a bit of maintenance and surviving as well. It's definitely a chapter where I would like to be doing more growing in different ways than I'm currently growing, if that makes sense. I don't want to be too elusive, but I'm growing definitely, like, emotionally and things like that, but when it comes to other ways, I would definitely like to not be as surviving as much in this point in my life.
Mm.
And I've definitely planned for and done things to make sure that I wasn't in that position, but life throws you curveballs. And so I guess this section of my life is more of the, like, responding to the curveball, like I'm making contact, but life is throwing another curveball. And so this is just the reaction, not necessarily appreciating that I have learned all the rules of the game, but that there's also other games to be played now, and I guess it's really hard to step back and characterize this in, I guess, one word or one finite synopsis, but I would definitely say it's a hybridization of being growing, but also surviving. Growth surviving
Mhm.
is a weird way of putting it.
Okay. Now, what's a way? What are you doing to help you grow? Is there books? Is there trainings? What is there that Dejan is doing to grow?
Yeah, I to appreciate and step back and look at the things that are challenging me and understand why they're challenging me. And so something that I do to help me grow is not only meditate on the things that I find as frustrations, but then taking those things head on and trying to turn those into strengths. And so I actually thought of the SAM, the Renewed Robotics idea, while I was stretching, while I was doing yoga. I don't have super great joint mobility, like my knees and my elbows and stuff, just from my military service. And so that's something that I've been insecure about in the past, is not necessarily being able to like have full range of motion, even at a young age. And so being able to meditate and do yoga and thinking about what I can do to promote my longevity is something that helps me grow. And then other things that I'm either insecure or not so proud about, realizing that it's a me problem, and how I can look within the resources and tools I already have to better myself is a way that I keep growing, by looking at things that make me uncomfortable and trying to use those as catalyst for security and for growth, if that makes sense.
Now, getting into yoga, that whole meditation process, how long have you been doing that?
I don't know. I want to say maybe since 2000 14 or 6. I don't, I've always, in high school and in middle school, even sports, you do stretches. And so inside your stretch, you even have like a 5 second or 10-second pause. Or going to like youth groups when I was younger, prayer and stuff is common. And so that's a form of meditation or just like self reflection that people don't
Hmm.
always appreciate. And so I don't know exactly if there was a time that I started, but I think I began to appreciate the power and the benefits of self-reflection probably in like 2015, 2014, 2015 or so.
And I mentioned meditation because it's hard.
It is.
It's hard. And I'm talking about me because I know the benefits. There's so many people that speak about yoga, that speak about meditation. And when I try to meditate, there's just so much going on in my head
Yeah.
that I'm like, this is not supposed to be meditation.
Mhm.
I'm supposed to be calm, collected, just relaxed.
Mhm.
But we all got to start somewhere.
Mhm.
If it's 30 seconds, if it's 1 minute, 5 minutes, and just keep on building from then. Just like anything, Renewed Robotics didn't grow to where it is now overnight. It takes some time to be putting into it to get there. And meditation is something that I am struggling with. I keep on trying because I know by me doing it consistently for 1 minute,
Mhm.
5 minutes, so on and so forth, even guided meditation, I know I'm going to get better. And I know the benefits are going to be even more a lot later on. But right now I can see the difference of me doing 30 seconds, 1 minute, just learning to stretch the time. Now, Dejan, what do you think people should take away from your story? Like what lesson?
Yeah. If I could touch on your previous thing about meditation, and then it might tie back in actually to something to take away, because I may learn from this as well. When it comes to meditation, I've definitely struggled with expectations going into it, and so maybe that's something that we can
Mm.
even take away from this story, that there are assumptions or expectations of clear-headedness or clairvoyance or even like success in business, and sometimes the actual act is the actual meditating. I wrote down that a lot of things that we fault on is not only the expectation of an outcome, the clairvoyance, but also it's okay to have the expectation of have the results you're currently having. And so that's something that maybe I need to take away from in business as well. A lot of these big companies like Dell and Apple and multiple billion-dollar corporations are also 50 years old or 40 years old, and I want to have that same success in like 24 months and like in like a year and a half or something. And so maybe that meditation, that patience is something that not only comes from that, but I wanted to say that it's okay to have those rush thoughts coming into your head and then letting those rush thoughts flow out. A lot of people want to like stop the rush thoughts so they can take them individual piece by piece. But if that's what your mind wants to do, that's what your mind wants to do, and you kind of have to let your mind, have that space to have rush thoughts come in. And if you're able to focus on one, you are, and if not, then you have to let that flow happen. So that's something that's definitely, it can be an important takeaway. And then wrapping it back to the Marine Corps, I used to volunteer instead of being voluntold. And so
Hmm.
that's just the locus of having control. They said that they need 2 or 3 people to volunteer for some event, and instead of having to go to the event and do something I don't want to do, at least I put myself in a situation where I told myself I was going to go to do this event. So if I don't like it, at least I did it and someone else didn't tell me to do it. And so I think with meditation, it can be a great place for your mind to be unconscious and let thoughts flow. That isn't time that you're asleep, because that's time where you're telling your body, you're forcing your body to recollect on the day, and for your body to have thoughts rush in and come out. And it can be forced because you know you have that time during that 8 hour window at night. And maybe that meditation, that 2 minutes during the day, is actually that control that you need, where, hey, maybe I'm not unconscious in the way that I'm currently used to, but in this sense now I have control over when I am unconscious, and that little bit of control can then manifest into other locusts in your lives. I think
Hmm.
that resonates into Renewed Robotics. I was out of control with my electricity. My bills, they would fluctuate every month. Some days it'd be like $30, and then it'd be like 70, and then 100, and then $20. And I wanted to have that control. And so I think that I also gained that control from Renewed Robotics. And now it puts me in the position where I can now have the solar panels and the batteries to not only have them for myself, but then to do from other people. And so focusing on my lack of control put me in a position to now control those resources, not only for myself, but for other people as well.
Touching back on Renewed Robotics and having control, and at the same time, volunteering instead of being voluntold, it's such a great point in many ways, because if you choose to change, if you volunteer to do an event, a job, a task of some sort, you're
Mm-hmm.
in control.
Mm-hmm.
You're at least doing it because you told yourself to do it. When someone else tells you to do something,
Mm-hmm.
hey, take out the trash, hey, fix your finances, do this or do that, start this, start the other, you start feeling resentment towards that person and that act. But if you do it, you choose to do it, whatever happens, you learn. You always try to have to be in the mindset of learning from everything that you do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
either things, what not to do, or what to do more of. And if you're in control, you're also in the control on how it turns out.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
like that point a lot because it plays in so many roles. A lot of the times I tell people to fix their finances, and they're like, you're just trying to tell me this and that and the other. And most of the time, they're forced to do it by an event in their life that they can run away from.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
being in control, starting, educating yourself, but not just getting all the knowledge in any field. It's not about just getting all the knowledge, but also taking action to see and put into practice everything that you already learned.
Yeah, it's the difference between like reacting to an unfortunate circumstance versus like it becoming an opportunity. That same person who needs to get their finances in order, if they were to come to you a month earlier and say, "Hey, I really want to get my finances in order," they're going to get the same information. But if they had gotten it a month earlier, they would be much more enthusiastic about how they interpret it in their brain and how like neuroplastic they are with it, as well as what they can
Hmm.
act going into the future. Versus if it's a reaction and they've been harmed and now they have to fix their finances, they're going to take away the bare minimum information, and it's not going to be as constructive in their mind. They're not going to correlate it to a positive event. And so that's something at Renewed Robotics I tell people: you should pre-order your SAM before you need it, before you get hit by
Hmm.
an earthquake, or before you can't afford your electricity or water bill and know you need a house that makes its own water and electricity. You can do something beforehand, and if you do it in a way you have control over it, it's a much more positive and empowering experience.
Yeah. Having that control, prevention before you actually have to be forced to do so. And at that point, they might run out of SAMs. You might have to wait a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to get your SAM because so many more people are ahead of you. What if ordering it now, you might get a SAM earlier, and by the time you need it, you're prepared.
Hmm.
It's like having that to go bag, like the to go bag in
Yeah.
case anything happens. You already have it set. 30 seconds, you grab it, you're out of the house, into your next mission. But if you have to pack it, maybe you forget something to pack, and now you get to the mission, you're like, oh, I forgot my e-tool, or I forgot my this, or I forgot this.
Yeah.
But if you do it and you're not under pressure, now you're in control in fixing and putting the right package together for success.
Absolutely.
Now, is there anything, Daizhan, that I haven't asked that you would like to share with us?
I think you did a great job of discussing my background and where I came from, why I'm doing it now. I think something that I didn't have an opportunity, I guess, to talk on, and I just didn't want to be too long winded, is just the first moon landings. I think we're recently, right now, as this podcast is being recorded, there are NASA astronauts actually going back around the moon. And I don't think anyone's released any finite designs on a long-term space habitat. And it's been the same issue as the first moon landing missions. I noticed as a kid that the astronauts with all the technology in the world had the same issues that I did, that they didn't have a place with electricity and water to sleep at night once they got to the moon. And this is with all of the technology and the brightest minds on Earth. And so now we're going back to the moon, and I would love for Renewed Robotics to be the first opportunity tying those together for me and being able to provide that first long-term housing solution, providing electricity and a livable place for astronauts for future generations, and seeing that as not only inspiration from my younger self, but then to provide for future generations to come. So that's something we didn't really touch on is current space exploration and how Renewed Robotics, not only from my childhood, we can aspire to satisfying the needs of Earth exoplanetarily, but that's something I really like thinking about when it comes to the grand scheme of things.
And that's where Renewed Robotics is going, and pretty quick.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, I like
this
to
is
think.
the thing. Hey, you love to think big. I love to think big, because if you don't, then you're limited. You're limiting yourself on what could happen. Now, how would it make you feel, Daizhan, to see a SAM in the moon with astronauts living in there for like 6 months, a year, and that's your product coming from Maryland, moving, very often, going into the Marine Corps, getting all your belongings pretty much taken away from you. Like, hey, I'm repoing everything for whatever reason, into an idea that developed into a SAM, and a SAM that can be in space. How would that make you feel, Dejan?
Yeah. I think after the first like Sam Exo Earth landed and I was done crying, like after my eyes were clear from I guess the overwhelming because it wouldn't be alone. I think that's something I would want to appreciate is that it's my network that really made it possible. It's the multiple PhDs and it's the friends believing in me and late nights with like designing wiring harnesses and donating $5 here and $20 there and then going to pitch competitions with me. I think that would all be extremely overwhelming. So after I got done crying and happiness of the first, you know, like livable long-term exploration habitat being deployed, and that idea came from me, I would be I don't know how I would describe the feeling. I think it would I don't know because I don't think that anyone has successfully been able to make humans a multi-planetary civilization. And so I think the experience will be so novel, I'll probably just like explode into a billion pieces or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there when that happens. And then we're going to record another podcast on just that emotion, because some people might think that it's impossible, and it can be to those that think it's impossible, but it's possible to those that believe it's possible. And you have the framework, you have the energy, the drive to be the first to do that.
Thank you.
Now, I'm a financial person. That's what I help people do. Plan their entire financial portfolio, do reviews, and have the money grow for themselves and have money when they actually need it. Now, what's a financial habit that has benefited you lately?
Yeah. I used to take money as an object that I could use to just get the services and goods I wanted, and not as a way to invest in the future that I wanted to have. And so, something I've been doing lately is being very deliberate, very intentional with investing my money, even if it is food, making sure that it's at a restaurant that I want to see be successful. If
Mm,
I'm going to donate $1 to a charity, making sure that it's a charity of a person I care about, that that dollar is being used for them to finish their education, or something like that, so that the world, when it does become the world it is becoming, I know that I've donated or I've contributed my dollars in a way that makes sense to me. That's definitely been a resource that I've been doing with my money, aside from saving, putting your eggs in multiple baskets, but making sure those baskets aren't just ones that are going to grow profits for profit's sake, but that they're going to do ethical and equitable things that align with your morals. So that way, when you do get that return on investment, it's not because something immoral or something bad happened, but because something good wanted to happen. But whether it be like electric vehicle startup or like a coffee shop that you wanted to support, but they're doing like locally grown coffee and they're doing natural coffee beans with no pesticides and no fungicides, even if it costs a little more. That's something that I use my money to invest in the world that I want to see become a better place in the way that I want to do it.
yep. I'm going to quote that. I want to invest my money in what I see coming back. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, my previous guest left a question. And the
Okay.
question goes like this. I don't know if are you ready?
I hope so. Sure. Yeah.
All right. So my previous guest said, if you could eliminate a social problem in the world, what would it be?
If I could eliminate one social problem in the world, that's tough. There is a lot of them. It's a large hierarchy. I would say I would eliminate the human perception that humans are distinctively different than any other animal on Earth. I think that's maybe a large social issue, that if we appreciate that, like, bottlenose dolphins and other humans and chimpanzees and whales, that they're all a large part of, and even like mycelium, like fungus, like if they're all realize that we're all a part of a shared planet and that we're all products, we're all the fruiting bodies, like the bananas and oranges, the same way the planet produces grapes and apples, it produces slugs and spiders and people. And we're all the fruiting bodies of this planet, and we have to love and respect and share that with each other. I think if we could eliminate that social issue of people putting themselves at the top of the biological pedestal and more a part of a biological network, it would eliminate a lot of the issues we have.
It's a really good social problem that needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
And if we can think it can be changed, there's just more of you that think the same, that instead of being at the top, we're actually a part of. I think it can change. And it would take some time, but I think it's very possible to do that.
Thank you. That's a tough question.
Dejan?
That's a tough one. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I saw it, I'm like, man, this is gonna be really good. Okay, well, Dejan Ennals, I appreciate you, brother, for being here and sharing your journey, your life chapters, and I wish Renewed Robotics to go to space. You know how big that is, and I'm here to support every single. Yeah, you have it right there. I'm here to support the entire journey in any way possible. And for those viewers and listeners, if you guys want to be part of this journey, Renewed Robotics information is going to be right below. Dejan Ennals, Instagram, Facebook, website, all those good stuff is going to be right below, so you can learn more about his vision, his goals, and where he's at right now and where he's going. And I just want to say to you guys to remember to pay yourself first. And I will see you next chapter. Take it easy.
Thanks for being part of this project to share people's journey. Like, share, and subscribe. See you next chapter.